They didn't design the 2026 Formula One cars for Max Verstappen, but that might not matter because Max Verstappen looks like he was designed for them. While everyone is arguing about batteries, power splits, lighter cars, heavier cars, and whether the sport is about to lose its soul, there's a quieter realization spreading inside the paddock. A dangerous one, because the very regulations meant to reset the field might actually sharpen the advantage of the one driver everyone is already chasing. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud yet. The 2026 cars don't reward bravery anymore. They reward restraint, calculation, control. And that should worry everyone, because Max Verstappen has been driving like this for years. Most fans still think Verstappen's dominance comes from aggression, from late braking, from refusing to back out, from intimidation. That story sounds good on social media. It looks great in highlight reels, but it's also outdated. And if you're still using it to explain Max Verstappen in 2026, you're already behind. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The modern version of Verstappen isn't a risk taker, he's a risk manager. And the strongest evidence of that shows up in one number most people never look at: crash frequency under pressure. Since 2022, while racing harder, with smaller margins, and under cost cap constraints, Verstappen's rate of race-ending incidents dropped dramatically compared to his early career. At the same time, his lap-to-lap variance tightened, his throttle traces smoothed, his minimum corner speeds stabilized. That's not chaos, that's discipline. And discipline is exactly what the 2026 rules quietly demand. The new regulations don't just change how much power the car has, they change when the driver is allowed to use it. Roughly a 50-50 split between internal combustion and electrical deployment means drivers will constantly manage energy, harvesting and release. Corner by corner, lap by lap, not flat out anymore. So let me ask you something uncomfortable. Who on the grid has spent the last 5 seasons winning races by not using full power unless it mattered? This is where the story starts to bend, because Verstappen learned early that the fastest lap is not always the fastest strategy. He became devastating in races not by attacking every corner, but by choosing exactly when to push and when to let the car breathe. If you're the kind of viewer who notices these details, you're already in the right place. Most people watching this are, and yeah, this is usually where people quietly subscribe without being told, because this isn't surface-level F1, it's pattern recognition. Now here's where things get uncomfortable for everyone else. The 2026 cars will punish overdriving harder than any generation before them. Battery deployment windows will be narrower. Rear axle stability under regeneration will be fragile. Drivers who rely on sliding the rear to rotate the car will fight energy loss, overheating, and inconsistent exits. Guess who thrives when the rear doesn't move? Verstappen has always preferred a planted rear, not because he can't handle oversteer, but because he doesn't want it. His feedback to engineers has consistently leaned towards stability under braking, predictable rotation, and early throttle confidence. That preference used to be optional. In 2026, it becomes mandatory. And here's the part nobody likes admitting. This isn't about raw speed anymore. It's about processing speed, decision density, how many variables a driver can manage without consciously thinking about them, energy harvesting, brake-by-wire feel, throttle modulation during regen, lift and coast precision. These aren't new skills, but they're no longer optional tools. They're the entire lap. And Verstappen's biggest strength has never been aggression, it's bandwidth. Watch his onboard data and you see something eerie. His inputs don't spike under pressure, they flatten. While others react, he anticipates. While others correct, he commits. That's why his race pace advantage often grows late in stints instead of shrinking. That's why his tyre life extends while others fade. That's why his errors don't come from pushing too hard. They come from moments of miscalculation, not emotion. Here's a sharp stat most fans miss. In races where Verstappen was managing a pace advantage of under 0.3 per lap, the hardest zone psychologically, his mistake rate was still among the lowest on the grid. That tells you something fundamental. He doesn't drive to the limit, he drives around it. And that's where the 2026 cars live. Now let's talk about the part nobody likes: politics. Because the 2026 regulations were written to reduce dominance, to compress the field, to make power deployment harder to exploit. But those same rules remove many of the hero moments that let less efficient drivers compensate with bravery. No more endless full throttle runs, no more saving mistakes with power, no more brute force exits. If you've ever wondered why Verstappen sometimes looks slower early in races, this is why. He's mapping the race, reading the system, letting others reveal their weaknesses. And here's where I want your opinion, not agreement. Do you think the 2026 rules will expose drivers who rely on instinct or punish drivers who rely on emotion? Drop your take below. Because not commenting on this one feels like watching the race and refusing to look at the timing screen. Now let's escalate this. The biggest myth about Verstappen is that he adapts because he's aggressive. The truth is harsher. He adapts because he internalizes feedback faster than anyone else. Engineers have said it quietly for years. His correlation between simulator behavior and real-world execution is frighteningly tight. That matters in 2026 more than ever. Because development won't be about chasing peak performance. It'll be about optimizing systems, iterating software, refining feel. Drivers who can't articulate what the car is doing electrically will slow the entire team down. And Max Verstappen doesn't just feel the car, he explains it. This is where careers start to separate, not on Sunday, on Tuesday, in meetings, in simulations, in how quickly the car evolves around the driver. That's why this isn't just a driving advantage. It's a structural one. And if you've made it this far, you're not a casual viewer. You're someone who actually cares about how this sport works beneath the noise. That's why people like you end up staying. Not because someone asked, but because leaving feels like missing half the story. Here's the final turn of the knife. The 2026 reset removes historical references. Everyone starts blind. And in blind environments, instinct isn't king. Pattern recognition is. Verstappen grew up racing under constant regulation shifts, karting changes, engine swaps, formula jumps. Car philosophies changing year to year. He didn't build one driving style, he built an adaptable one. So when fans ask, will 2026 finally stop Max? They might be asking the wrong question. The real question is this: what if 2026 removes the last advantages his rivals were still using to survive? Because if the sport moves further toward efficiency, control, and mental processing, then Max Verstappen doesn't need the best car. He just needs a functional one, and that should scare everyone. If you want the next piece of this puzzle, the one that explains why some elite drivers may actually struggle when these cars arrive, that video is already waiting for you on the channel. Because this story doesn't end in 2026. That's just where it becomes impossible to ignore.